Peace. Islam. Sheekamauga Alamassee-El. Coming at y'all live. Deep down. Alamassee Arabian country. And still in so-called Milledgeville, so-called Georgia. Again, Milledgeville, the so-called city of Milledgeville, you've already established that it is an old Moorish town that was commandeered in the Treaty of Fort Wilkinson in 1802. It was commandeered by the budding United States through an agreement. And again, we've already talked about fundamentally all these land cessions, all these treaties, all they were for the Barbary nations who still control the majority of the South at that time, and they still control really the majority of the country. But for the Barbary nations, states, and everything like that to not mass arrest settlers, to not snatch them up, to not do raids. You know what I'm saying? We caught because at certain points, if these people left the colonies and they were just running around or whatever, we would arrest them. We would snatch them up. I mean, they would get, they might get killed. I mean, it's a lot of stuff that would happen. You know what I'm saying? And then, also what happened was, a lot of these people might have ran, they might have ran away from the so-called colonies, and they might have been kind of taken in. A lot of families, a lot of Moorish families, Muslims or Yahudi families or whatever who were more so in the interior, they may have taken these people in, allowed them to kind of integrate into society. They may have let them marry in their families, all these type of things. But we still had a main policy. We still had at a lot of these points that we were controlling these territories, the Barbary territories outside of the proclamation line of 1763. We still had a policy to pretty much snatch anybody up that wasn't what they were supposed to be. You know what I mean? So if you was a settler or whatever, you was out of bounds, we was just gonna get you. We was just gonna snatch you up. You know what I mean? Don't get caught by the slave patrols. You don't want that. You know what I mean? The real sheriffs, just again, how you have highway patrols and police now and all that's old American practice. You know what I'm saying? And honestly, keep it a buck, the Ku Klux Klan, they adopted their demonstration from the old Muslims that will patrol. You know what I mean? The night riders demonstration, riding on horses with the cone hats and all that, man, that's an old Moorish Klan. That's an old demonstration in America. Don't get it messed up. You know what I'm saying? They took that from the old Barbary nations. That's how we used to get down. You know what I mean? But anyway, so really, and we're gonna do a drop on the Red Sticks, the Red Stick War and the Creek Wars, and the War of 1812, how it all kind of ties into history and the situation, in the quagmires and the situations we kind of currently find ourselves in. But if you look at a lot of the Creek War kind of happening around, I guess, 1813 or the early 1800s, what you're going to see is a disagreement between the more traditionalist so-called Creeks or Mekasuki, the Moors of the South, a disagreement between the traditionalists and the people that were trying to more so, the people that were more assimilationists, meaning they were more so dealing with wanting to get money, industry, adopting more European values, ways of dress, and all of that. And again, these are a lot of, the head honchos in the whole European, the British demonstration, the French demonstration, all that, these are our relatives, these are our cousins. They may be mixed, they may be dark skinned, they may be light skinned, but we were related. You know what I mean? These people were related to us. You know what I mean? That's why we've always been going back and forth doing business over there in Iberia and Europe, North Africa and all of this. These people are related to us. So, since with that being the case, when you have these people coming over here and they have people up under them, you're gonna be, you may find some people may find themselves being friendly to their institutions, to the way they do business, their cultures, because they're your cousins. You know what I mean? So a lot, you just had a large assimilation movement within the so-called Barbary territories. A lot of people started more, again, they were dressing more European. They might not have wore their turbans no more. They might not have wanted to go there. They might adopt the more so-called Christian, some of these type of values and all of that, which again, not right or wrong, but it wasn't the traditional American culture that we were used to, because we were 5 and 6 Yahudi Muslim. You know what I mean? That's just the old American way, dealing with the old culture, the old world. We old school. It's always been that way in this turf. So, if you had a lot of the creeks, a lot of creeks kind of wanting to, especially when the United States was formed. Again, this was all treaty. This was all an agreement between certain factions of our people and other factions of our people. There was just a big disagreement. That the traditionalist so-called Creeks, there would have been more people like me who, keeping the old ways, dealing with Islam and the old culture, the old way of dressing, real conservative type of culture. And you will have the, they call these people kind of within the Creek demonstration, they call them the white sticks. So somebody like me who's traditionalist would be a red stick. More the people who want to assimilate, the brothers and sisters who want to assimilate, they'd be the white sticks. So, and like again, a lot of you would have whole towns of people who are more, sheiks of these towns, because now it's a mayor of a town, but it used to be a sheik, they call it a chief, but it might have been a sheik of a town. You may say, okay, in our town, we're gonna go ahead and, Europeans, these people can come integrate with us. We're gonna adopt their culture. We're gonna kind of deal with more their, do business the way they like to do business, and we're gonna agree to kind of deal with more so contracts and land allotments and things of that nature. And then you'll have the traditionalists who are more dealing with communal land, farming, get it out the mud, free mercantile, holy, dealing with more of a high spiritual, high religious demonstration. So you would have these two factions. So the reason why, the lands, a lot of the land cessions in the South, and why you had the War of 1812. And if you study, we're going to do a drop on the Creek Wars, but why Andrew Jackson, and again, Andrew Jackson was a brother. Don't get it messed up. You know what I'm saying? All of the image of him on the $20 bill, that's not the real image. That's not how Andrew Jackson really looked. He was a light-skinned brother. You know what I'm saying? Let's just keep it 100. You know what I mean? But he himself was more of an assimilated. You know what I mean? He was more European. His demonstration was more European, so he was more of an assimilationist, and a businessman trying to get that money. But at the same time, if you do the knowledge on Andrew Jackson was still pro-American. He was still more of a Confederate demonstration, a more, a more noble type of demonstration, because he wasn't really with allowing no central bank and all that stuff in America and all of that. He wasn't with all that. The foreigners trying to take over the banking system and all that. He wasn't really with all that, but he wasn't really trying to be a traditionalist either. You know what I mean? All the way a traditionalist. He was more about, let's let these settlers move around. Y'all quit snatching them up. We got to enforce these laws. We got the treaty, the Moroccan treaty. Y'all need to abide by the Moroccan treaty that the Sultan signed and all of that. You know what I mean? But the reason why Andrew Jackson and the Federal Army in the War of 1812, they were able to kind of advance and shut down the Red Sticks all through Alabama and Georgia, and all through so-called the current states of Georgia and Alabama, was because you had so many so-called Creeks of people, people of my phenotype, this phenotype right here, who were assimilationists. So they were like, they weren't the hardcore old school. They had kind of got watered down. They weren't the hardcore old school. They had like mixed families, which again, not right or wrong. It's all good. They might have had mixed families. A lot of people were more mixed in their, in their towns and their turfs and their districts. So they were more friendly to the United States European settler demonstration coming through. You know what I'm saying? So they were the one. These people were the ones who used they turned their militias into kind of bands to assist the Federal Army in advancing through the South. You know what I mean? And advancing all the way down to Pensacola. You know what I'm saying? All through Alabama, shut the Red Sticks down. And again, if you do the knowledge on the Red Stick War, man, the Red Sticks was not no Rudy Poos. You know what I'm saying? The Red Sticks, the real Muslims, they had a real army. It took a lot. Literally, the Federal Army had to drill thousands and thousands of men, all at Fort Hawkins and all of that, and they had to run thousands and thousands. They had to run whole brigades down into Alabama to deal with the Red Sticks. So that means, again, they like to have the narrative that the so-called American Indians, which is the Moors, you know what I'm saying, were just some arrow shooting Rudy Poos. Man, the Red Sticks had a whole army. Don't get it messed up. Cannons, boats, all that, bro. You know what I'm saying? You just would have seen some brothers running. You would have seen some fools running at you with some turbans and some raw rifles. You know what I mean? That's all. That's the only difference. And you would have seen the Federal Army They would have had more the European type of colonial type of demonstration. That's all. That's the only difference, man. But again, the reconstructed post-Civil War history, they hate Islam. They hate Muslims. You know what I'm saying? So they don't want to get a Muslims no credit. So anything that was Muslim is on some savage, arrow shooting goofball stuff, man. You know what I'm saying? So it is what it is. But anyway, so the more the more developing liberal assimilationist faction of our people assisted the United States demonstration, able to force a lot of the Barbary nations into land cessions and giving up, and allotting a certain amount of land for the United States to allow their settler class to move into. And then they were doing land lotteries and all of that. But this is the thing. This is the thing that they don't like to talk about. Again, back in the early days of the United States, a lot of the head honchos were still related to we were all related. So these were different people. These were people. They might call them full-blooded so-called Negroes or have mixed Negroes or whatever. These are back in the early 1800s. The head honchos in the United States were these people. You know what I'm saying? They were mixed or they were full-blooded. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? And you might have, that's who was kind of the head honchos in the United States. And the reason why is because they were, again, we were all from the same blood group. We were kind of related. So these people were able to move around and create treaties and all of that. We were more friendly to these people. You wouldn't see respect. You wouldn't see Donald Trump or Joe Biden back then making no treaties, you know what I'm saying, with no Muslim like me. It just wasn't going down. You know what I'm saying? Like it wasn't going to happen. Respect to these people, but it wasn't like that back then. These people were more from our demonstration, which is why we did business and were able to make treaties, which is why they were able to even move through the South and have so-called Indian alliances to even move their armies through these territories. You know what I'm saying? So, again, even though you had the land cessions and some settlers were able to move into the South, all the way up until between 1812 and all these land cessions in the South and everything, even in the Midwest, mainly in the South though, in the West. Even though you had these land cessions, the culture, that Muslim Yahudi culture of the South still kind of remained intact all the way up to 1865. You know what I'm saying? So even if you had people who became citizens of whatever state that got formed, but they might have been so-called Creeks. But they, the so-called allodial titles might have been given, the trust and titles that those nations had to the land might have been ceded over to the United States. You know what I'm saying? In certain locales or whatever, through these treaties. The culture, most of these people retained their land through lots, even though a lot of people lost it through land prospects and homesteaders and all that garbage. Well, a lot of people maintained their land, but the culture largely stayed the same. So people kind of were dressing the same. They might have got a little bit more European, but they were still dressing the same. The sisters were still wrapping their hair. The culture was still the same. You know what I'm saying? And even the people who were more going over to the European demonstration in the South, they were still dealing with that greater, noble Southern culture. You know what I'm saying? Now, what these people started to realize as time went on in the 1800s, and you can tell, and I'm gonna read this sign about the Georgia Session Assembly, or Session Convention, and I think 1860. What these people started to realize was, you know what I'm saying, going all the way back to the Red Stick War, they might have called the Red Sticks the real niggas. You know what I mean? The real Nagas, the real niggas. What these people who thought that it would be okay to integrate and assimilate and all of this with this coming settler culture demonstration, Roman demonstration, they thought it was going to be all good and they was going to be able to maintain their status and all of that by you know what I'm saying, by going ahead and integrating and getting more money or whatever they thought gain that they was going to get. What they started to realize around the 1850s, 1860s was, damn, we starting to lose who we are. This is really not going our way. You know what I mean? We starting to lose land. They want to bring in these settlers. They want to bring in a democracy. They want to destroy the republic. They want to give all of these foreigners the right to make all the decisions. It was just going downhill. So the Creeks, the Europeans, the people who are people in the South, who assisted all of this assimilation, they was like, well, damn, them red sticks, them real niggas, them real Muslims, they was right. So let's go ahead and do a secession, and let's try to preserve it at this point. Let's go ahead and come together with the Muslims that's still around, and we're gonna form the Confederacy, and we're gonna secede from the so-called United States. You know what I'm saying? They said, oh dang, the real niggas was right. You know what I mean? But at this point, even though they put up the good fight, we put up the good fight. It was almost too late. You know what I'm saying? Like y'all had already given up y'all had given up your culture, and you know what I'm saying? And you know, again, the Most High ain't with it. The Most High gonna punish you for that. You know what I'm saying? If you don't hold firm and stand on the covenants, you're gonna suffer some punishment. So by then it was kind of too late. But that's all the Confederacy was a lot of these assimilationists, Moors, Muslims, Moors, Europeans, and people, and you know what I mean, people who really was a part of the old culture, even though they thought that they was gonna gain something by assimilating, they started to realize that they messed up. So they were like, well, let's do a last ditch effort to save what the old culture was. But again, it was probably too late. But we're gonna read the Georgia Session. See, we're gonna read this marker. So what it says is, on January 16th, 1861, the Georgia Session Convention met here to consider seceding from the United States. Secession began in response to Abraham Lincoln's election as president the previous November, and the belief that his Republican Party was anti-slavery in its mission and its purpose. According to Georgia's secession ordinance, secession was not a foregone conclusion. Initially, a slim majority of delegates were opposed to it. After 3 days of strident rhetoric on both sides of the question, the final vote on January 19th was decidedly pro-secession, 208 to 89. Delegate Alexander Stephens warned that secession meant war, and who but this convention will be held responsible for it. Secession was never put to a popular vote. All right, so it tells you right there. And don't get it messed up. Abraham Lincoln, the anti-slavery deal, again, in the South we had a certain, you know, I'm gonna do another drop about this slavery propaganda. But in the South we just had an old noble culture. So this is the type of goofball propaganda, because the whole thing about the Union was to allow these settlers freedom of movement and mass settlement, because these people were easier to control when it comes to the industrialization. They'll do what they're told. They know that the originals are not going to do what they're told. We're going to do whatever Allah commands us to do. You know what I'm saying? So they wanted to get these settlers all over the place so they could help, you know, and then they could bring down the old republic and impose the corporate industry and all of that and raid the land. That's what the whole goal was about at the end of the day. You know what I'm saying? So when they say Abraham Lincoln was anti-slavery, it does not the slavery that they've told us about. You know what I'm saying? Like, first of all, these democracy pushing people and all of that, they're gonna always create some type of propaganda anytime they find an old conservative culture about it being a slave culture. You know what I'm saying? Like, say you might have had a brother you might have had a Muslim in the South like myself. I might have had 100 acres of land, and I might have had 3 wives and 20 children. You know what I'm saying? And we all worked the land, and I was the boss. I was the man. Don't you know that they made up stories about, especially after the war was over and they burned a lot of records, they would have said, my name, you know, my real name might have been Tallulah Kalachi or something like that. But my English name may be John Stevens or James Stevens or something like that. Don't you know that they would have said James Stevens was the slave master, his wife, you know, him and his wife, his main wife, were the slave master, and then they would have said my other wife or something like that she was a enslaved woman, and my bed wench or something like that, and all my kids and all their cousins who was all on the land working, and we was all working together. But you know, I was the boss. I had the title. They were all the slaves. You know what I'm saying? So essentially, when they created this slave, and now not to say, and we're gonna talk about who were the real slaves and what slavery really was, but essentially what they were trying to tell most of the Southerners and the Westerners and all of that was, when they say they got the freedmen and they freed the slaves, essentially they were telling these people that they were freed from their old culture. Because our old culture is conservative. It's noble. It's rites of passage. These things. So they were saying, well, we freed y'all to come work for us and be wage workers and have a liberal culture and do whatever you want to do. You ain't got to be strict and conservative no more. And you ain't got to be led by men no more, by your own men no more. You know what I'm saying? Like real men. You ain't got to be led by real men no more. Now you can be led by bus. Now you can be led by weak men and pastors and all these weak clowns like that. That's freedom to these people. That's really essentially what the whole slavery narrative was. Abolition. It was, well, we want to free these Moors from their conservative old noble culture. You know what I'm saying? It's all game, man. And don't be game goofy. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, so I just wanted to tap in about essentially, you know, when they did Abraham Lincoln. Unfortunately, you know, and he was melanated himself, a Melungeon, kind of a Turkish origin. That's why they used to do caricatures of him being a Moor, because he was a kind of an old school. He was an old Turk, old Moorish himself. But when they say anti-slavery, they basically saying these people are still retaining people in bondage down there. They enforce their laws. They will lock you up, and they, you know what I mean, and they don't pay no damn taxes. You know what I'm saying? So the Southerners are like, that's what they call anti-slavery. So when the Southerners say it's anti-slavery, it's like these Northerners are liberals, Yankees, and they want to bring this liberal democratic culture to us, and we ain't with it. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, just tapping in on that, man. Just really doing the knowledge on the slavery, showing that the real Confederacy and the secession was these people, these assimilationist people of the South, who started to realize, going all the way back to the Creek Wars, the so-called Cherokee-Tusalagi Wars, and all of that, where they were helping the so-called United States shut down the traditionalists, like, you know, the traditionalist Muslims. You know what I mean? They started to realize they messed up, so they were like, well, damn, you know what I'm saying? We might as well, you know, we got to come together if we want to maintain our colonial titles and our land and our culture. We're gonna have to come up and put up a fight because we messed up. So, essentially, man, just putting it all in perspective. But just tapping in with y'all. I'll tap back in with y'all later. Peace.